Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Finding Nemo movie talk. This is part of ArtsQuest at Home, and it's presented by BSI. And today's episode is sponsored by Lehigh Valley Health Network and UGI. And I just want to say before I introduce Anthony here, I'll stop sharing my screen so you can switch over. This is one of my favorite Pixar movies, and I'm happy to be the host tonight on it. And I'm glad that you're all here joining us tonight. And I'll take the time now to introduce Anthony DeSantis, the movie guru of ArtsQuest, who will be walking us through Finding Nemo. All right.
Hey, Mike, can you hear me? Are we good?
Yep, I can hear you.
Cool. All right. My blue line on my mic disappeared, so I didn't know. Well, all right. As long as it's not red, I guess that's what's important. All right. So, Finding Nemo is a classic film. I think already like an actual classic, not just like a Disney classic, but like, you think the great movies. I would say Finding Nemo's up there. I would think, it's definitely one of the best animated movies for certain. Did you see this in theaters, Mike, back in 2003?
I did. I really enjoyed it overall. I'll let you talk first, and then we'll touch on why I enjoyed it. But yeah, I remember seeing it in theaters. It was a revolutionary for that time.
Oh yeah, totally. And this is like when animation was like still finding its foot. This, I believe, was like the last year when like you had like 3 or 4 computer animated films, and that was it. And now it's like there's like 20 of them a year. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, But yeah, all right. So I'm gonna have a quick presentation, and then we will talk about our feelings with Finding Nemo. All right. So. This man is Andrew Stanton. He is the writer, director. He's been with Pixar almost from the inception. He worked on Toy Story, A Bug's Life he was co-director on, Toy Story 2 he was involved with. I don't think he had much to do with Monsters, Inc. But so those were the 4 films before this. Finding Nemo was the 5th. So it's rare in that Finding Nemo, I mean, I don't quite know how much it's improved now, but then most of the time you wouldn't start an animated film with a finished screenplay. Like this thing was written out start to finish before they actually started making. A lot of times, like in the process of animating and all that, they will just kind of find the story, solidify things as they go along. But for this one, it was locked down in like 1997. They started like scripting this thing. Basically, it came to be from a couple of ideas. One was when Andrew was a kid. He'd go to the dentist office, and the dentist there had a fish tank, and he used to wonder how those fish got there. Were they trying to escape and all that? So obviously that plays a big part of this film. And then he was also a new father with a young son, and he was overprotective of his son at times and realized, what am I doing? Maybe I should lighten up a bit. So these two bases of ideas kind of put everything into motion. So basically, he pitched the idea to John Lasseter, who was the head of Pixar at the time. This whole thing, this giant spiel of how everything would go. And when he finished, John Lasseter said, "You had me at fish." So literally, this thing, he was sold almost from the second he started talking. And what's really cool about this movie, and we'll get into this more, is like just how amazing the ocean looks, especially in 2003 technology. I mean, now you wouldn't really bat an eye, but back then, like, I remember looking at this movie, my eyeballs, like, exploded. You know what I mean? It's like, wow, what can they do next, I mean, and this is the time when, like, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, and all that are coming out. So you're just seeing all these different, computer-generated images just really excelling and coming into their own, honing their crafts, being perfected. And this was definitely a revolutionary film, at least for its backdrops. So, all right. So yeah, here are some concept art for the film. These are some development pictures. And what they wanted to do with this was like, they wanted to make sure that the ocean looks like the ocean. They actually had to, when they were animating this, kind of dial it back a tiny bit so that people wouldn't think that they just shot this in the ocean and then animated fish on top of it. They're like, no, we did actually do work here. Like, these are computer animators. So, yeah. So a thing you may notice in a lot of Pixar movies is Easter eggs, nods to other films. A lot of times what they'll do is one movie will hit and another movie to come. So this is the end of Monsters Inc., the movie that came out, like a year and a half beforehand. And you'll see Boo is handing Sully a Nemo fish. So really clever that these movies are very well connected. There is a theory somebody posted online that you can look at that like literally breaks down all the movies and how they're all connected. But it's like a psychological thing, something like Andy was a one person, then he became somebody else, and like the answer to that is no. Like it's an intriguing theory. I'm more amazed that somebody took the time to actually sit down and think that up, but I don't think so.
That's a whole nother movie talk episode.
Yeah, break down what is the root of Pixar. Is this a true cinematic universe? You know what I mean? Yeah. All right. So we got to get into the casting for this. So basically, with Marlin, the idea of a clownfish. Clownfish don't usually come out of their anemone. I'm going to start butchering this word like Nemo does. So basically, Andrew Stanton decided that what better fish to go on a long journey than one that would be completely out of its element, and that is the clownfish. And Mike, do you know who Albert Brooks is? Are you familiar with his work other than this?
Yes. I mean, my favorite movie with him is The In-Laws. But yes, I'm very familiar with his work, and he voiced Marlin, I think, perfectly.
Yeah. So basically, they said that he kind of saved the film, Andrew Stanton said, when casting, because before this, Albert Brooks has been a very well-known creative force for like 30 years. He did a lot of amazing comedies he wrote, directed in the 70s and 80s, real life, modern romance. And this is not the kind of movie you get somebody of Albert Brooks's caliber to be in. And the funny thing is like, just a little side note, like, when I say how good this man is, when they were creating Saturday Night Live, before they decided to do one different host a week, they offered Albert Brooks a chance to just host for the entire season. And he said, why don't you just get a different host every time? So that's actually how that came. Like, this man is brilliant. So basically they pitched him the idea of a clownfish that isn't funny. And Albert Brooks like jumped at the chance. Actually, if you watch the extras on the DVD, there is like a extra feature of him butchering jokes that he would just improvise. There's like, Andrew Stanton said that, like, I mean, the clip's real small, but Andrew Stanton said, like, there's hours of material of Albert Brooks just making up and butchering jokes, and it's perfect, it just works real well. And also, like, I mean, this man's very funny, but at the same time, like, with Marlin, he's very sincere. Like, Marlin is funny, but he's not like, he doesn't know he's funny. I mean, the funny thing is he's not funny, Like, that's the thing. It's and he plays it 100% sincere, I think, which just adds to the humor. So you have Marlin, and then of course we have Dory, who kind of became the breakout character of this. So originally Dory was actually written as a male, and when they were casting and trying to figure out who could be it, Andrew Stanton was watching Ellen's sitcom at the time, and basically what happened is she was talking about something in a scene and ended up changing the subject 5 times before getting to her actual point. And he was like, yeah, this will work. So he pitched it to her. She was nervous, but she said yes. They let her improvise a lot of times. You can definitely tell watching this, like, there's times when they're like, okay, Ellen, just do your thing, And it's funny because they knew she was a funny person, but the scene when she talks to Marlin, and it's a dramatic scene where she says, like, I don't want to lose you, with you I feel like I'm home, and all that. Basically, they thought they were going to have to really coach her and direct her. Like, they finished the day, and they said, tomorrow you're going to come in, we'll do this, we'll coach you. But right now, why don't we just shoot, like, a test rehearsal of it? And that's actually what you hear in the film. She nailed it the first time. They were like, we don't need to do this. You don't have to come back tomorrow. This was great. So, yeah, I mean, Ellen DeGeneres is very talented. And actually, she is the reason Finding Dory actually, like, kind of happened. She would constantly hit up Andrew Stanton over the years and say, hey, we're going to do Finding Dory. We're going to do Finding Dory. We're going to do Finding Dory. And eventually, Pixar relented. Obviously, there was demand for it. So, yeah. And then this, to me, is actually my favorite casting. And it's for a more serious character. But to me, this just makes so much sense. Like, Willem Dafoe, one of the best character actors in the 80s and 90s, like, this man, he was known for, like, being the dark characters, the hard characters, and to me, the fish that has tried to escape so many times and is tough. He does have a soft side, but, to me, this is ideally perfect casting. And actually, it's funny because the fish Gil that he plays actually has the same scars that Tom Berenger has in Platoon, who, spoiler alert, kills Willem Dafoe in that film. So anyway, sorry for spoiling Platoon. It's been out for 35 years. Anyway, so yeah. So originally in the story elements for this film, originally there was a time when Gil was going to give Nemo more of a backstory about his life, talking about like the brothers and sisters he had and all that. Eventually Nemo would come to realize that he was lying, and essentially what he did was, while being in the fish tank, he would see the books that, you know, children would come in with and read, and would just kind of create his own backstory through that. They were going to get into that, but they just cut that out, you know, shorten the time and all that. Crush is actually voiced by Andrew Stanton, the director himself. When they were storyboarding this and doing like test audio, Andrew Stanton recorded himself doing Crush and figured we'll get a bigger actor at some point. So they did test screenings amongst the studio and the staff and all that. And his voice actually tested great. Like everybody loved him and said, don't replace yourself. Like you should just do this. And this has actually happened a few times in the movies. Brad Bird, who directed and wrote The Incredibles, is the voice of Edna Mode. And actually Brad Bird's son is the voice of Crush's son in this movie. So yeah. So anyway, yeah, Andrew Stanton, this works real well. Let's see what else we got next. He also is the voice of the seagulls that go, mine, 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 which, my God, you could probably torture somebody if you just played that audio on reboot for a while, you know, on loop. But yeah, so he is the voice of all of those. Then, of course, you have John Ratzenberger, who is the Pixar Good Luck Charm, does a voice in every Pixar film. But yeah, this actually is one of my favorite cameos of him because it's literally, I love the different shapes these things make. The Sydney Opera House is funny, but I actually like the boat and then the one fish jumps off. To me, that makes me laugh quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, they'll never do a Pixar movie without him. Even if he just has like a line or makes a sound effect, he will be in all of these things. So as I mentioned before, you know, the visuals for the ocean had to be breathtaking, but also look real, but not photo real. You know what I mean? It had to look like, yes, people worked on this. So here's just a couple of the beautiful scenes from the film. So I'm pretty sure this is the one that I'm currently behind. Am I imagining that?
Yep.
No?
That's the one.
Yeah. All right. So here's another great one. Here's another one. But yeah, like it just, you know, this is such a colorful film. Obviously it has more of like an ocean neon color style to it, but this is definitely, I mean, this is a beautiful film, and it's amazing to think that like this is all made by hand essentially. You know what I mean? Like this is completely animated and glorious. Now, what is this next thing? Okay. So yeah. So Darla is technically the villain of the film. Doesn't have a lot of screen time though. Is mostly seen through this photo. She was actually named after a producer on the film. I believe her name was Darla Anderson, who played a lot of pranks on Andrew Stanton. And he goes, "Here you go. You're gonna be the villain of this movie," and she was flattered. But yeah. So let me see what my next image is. Okay, so we'll get back to that in a second. So I'll just leave it here for a minute. So basically, when Finding Nemo was being, this is gonna be what we're gonna hold. This is gonna be our static screen for like 5 minutes. So Finding Nemo, for Pixar and for animation, was a big game changer. And essentially, I say this in the sense that it's funny to say game changer because the 4 Pixar movies that preceded it all kind of were game changers. You know, they were progressing animation. The stories were getting stronger. They were all very well critically well received. But Finding Nemo, so the first 4 movies actually were all came out in November. This was the first one to come out in the summer in May. And like back then, like, I mean, you know, there weren't all the Marvel movies and all that kind of stuff. Right now, really, the summertime, essentially in 2003, the beginning of the 2000s was reserved mostly for Star Wars, Spider-Man. You know, those are the movies that came out in May. So this was a big deal. And it, at the time, up until, I believe Toy Story 3 was the highest grossing animated movie that was ever released. It had the highest opening weekend for an animated film. It bested The Lion King as the highest grossing animated film at that time. If you adjust for inflation, Finding Nemo is I believe it's the third highest grossing movie of all time. Finding Dory, I think, has outgrossed it by like $2 million, $3 million. You can check it on Box Office Mojo. But yeah, so this movie was a major, major success. And, you know, this is in a time when Disney had Pixar, but Disney wasn't this giant corporation buying other corporation companies kind of thing. Like, they didn't own Marvel. They didn't own Star Wars. So, you know, Disney owned Pixar. I mean, they didn't own them at the time. Pixar this time was just a company that they partnered with. They had a contract to do 7 movies together. This was the 5th. So really, like, you know, in the summer of 2003, and I remember this was an amazing summer for Disney. Now it's not a big deal because Disney make like $6 billion a year. You know, last year alone, we got Toy Story 4, Star Wars, Rise of Skywalker, Avengers Endgame, like, you know. So what I'm going to say is probably not a big deal now, but in 2003, they had an amazing summer with this, Freaky Friday, and the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie. Like, it was a major success. Yeah. Like, I mean, obviously Freaky Friday was on a smaller scale, but like, you know, you're just kind of seeing the different kinds of movies Disney can make all at once. And like, this was a huge deal for them. I remember there was a time when these movies all came out within like 2 months of each other. And I worked at a Regal, and I'm pretty sure, I didn't work at Regal then, but I'm pretty sure when I was like 13, I think they offered it where like you could buy 1 ticket and see like all 3 back to back. Like, you know, it was, yeah, like, dude, it was a good summer for them. They were like, wow, we're doing great. This is awesome. So yeah, so this movie comes out, gets incredible reviews, major smash, you know, talk of Oscars and all that kind of stuff. It was not nominated for Best Picture, which at that time was rare for an animated film. I think at the time only Beauty and the Beast had been nominated, but like nominated for Best Picture Comedy at the Golden Globes. You know, smash everywhere, as I mentioned. The box office was huge. And even then, like, this movie has never left the cultural zeitgeist. Like, we all can still reference this movie. If I say, mine, like, you know, people, if I go keep swimming, just keep, like, everybody knows what you're referring to. And in my opinion, if you can make references like that without having to say Finding Nemo, like, the movie is a staple of pop culture.
Fish are friends, not food.
Yeah. Yeah. My God. Fish, all friends, not food. So good. Like, it just, like, I watched this. I mean, I've seen this movie a million times, but I watched it again last week. And you weren't on our Toy Story talk, were you, Mike?
No, unfortunately.
So what amazes me most about Pixar is that they make movies that, like, are for everybody. Like, and many of their films, I think, are a lot of films, I think, are made more for adults but are kid friendly. You know what I mean? Like, I'll use the theme of Ratatouille. I think Ratatouille is a bit more of a mature film. But there's something in these movies for everybody. You know, like, you get older, you find jokes you didn't get as you were a kid that you laugh more at, you know. But yeah, these movies will never get old. You'll always find something rewarding watching this. Like I was laughing the entire time. So when the movie was released on DVD, it was the highest grossing DVD. Actually, like, I think it still holds the record. Like, I think it made like $40 million just in DVD.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That might even be wrong. I think that it might be a much higher number, but yeah, like, this was literally, I mean, I think I read this from like, this is reporting as of like 6-7 years ago, and I can imagine that has only gone up. You know what I mean? Like, it's just something that is just so easily digestible for everybody, you know?
Yep.
Of course, there's lots of Easter eggs in the film, as I mentioned. If you watched all the way through the end credits, this is actually the first, and it's not because of this, but if you watch through the end credits of Finding Nemo, there is, after all the credits are on, a post-credit scene, which I won't spoil. If you didn't know that, you should check it out and watch to the very end of the movie. There's a callback reference to something that happens earlier that, like, literally I didn't notice until about 2012 when I saw the movie, when I rewatched it in theaters in 3D. So, but it's there. But yeah, this is a cool throwback, callback. This is Mike Wazowski. Like I said, they mentioned they always put each other in their movies and all that in the Pixar cinematic universe. What else I got? All right, so I'll just kind of leave it here for now. Moral of the story is, you know, this was So I kind of want to break down Pixar for a second into like phases. I don't quite know. I think we're in phase 3 or 4, if I would say. I can't quite figure out where it starts, but this is phase 1. Phase 1 is Toy Story to Ratatouille. And when I say that it's because Ratatouille might be Cars. Either Cars or Ratatouille. What's up?
I was gonna say it might be Cars, not
Yeah.
Ratatouille.
So basically what happened is Pixar had this contract with Disney. I think it ended with Cars. If not, it's Ratatouille. And then between those films, Disney bought Pixar. So that's phase 1. So I would say here, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think all of these movies that followed this, I mean, The Incredibles, we're going to talk about next week, brilliant film. But Cars, whatever. But Finding Nemo kind of, with the exception of the original Toy Story for, its groundbreakingness. In many ways, I would say Finding Nemo is kind of the crowning glory of the bunch, And again, I'm not, film is subjective. I'm not saying this is the best film quality-wise of those films, but I'm saying, like, in phase 1, this is Pixar at its height. Like, this is the most successful, well-received, breaking all kind of records and all that. And it's just a terrific movie. I mean, even I'm going to make a call. I don't know how many people are going to know this. Remember that terrible show, Mike, The Jersey Shore?
Yeah. What about it?
Don't watch it, children. But anyway, I remember they did like an interview on MTV once where they interviewed these people about their favorite movies. And Ronnie, good old Ronnie from Jersey Shore, said Finding Nemo was his favorite movie. And it gave me a little bit of respect for him. But it's like, that's what I mean. Like, this movie can hit everybody. Like, if you, in my opinion, if you don't like this movie, like, you're not a person. Deep cut. So.
I just looked it up. Cars was the 7th movie.
Cars was the 7th. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So they had the 7-film deal, and then Ratatouille was the one that, was the one that started their phase 2. So, yeah. But again, and then noticing again, maybe it's because this came out in the summertime as opposed to November, that's the reason that, this movie did so well. And now Pixar kind of has June cemented out. Every now and then they do release a second movie in November. But for the most part, like, they have shown that Pixar movies are summer movies. It's like, that's when people want to go. And these are event films. Like, they really are. You're excited when a new Pixar movie comes out. Maybe not Cars 3, but you're excited when a new Pixar movie comes out. And, I was pumped. I was out of my mind to see Finding Dory, which I thought was great. I liked Finding Nemo more. Yeah, I liked Finding Nemo more, but I still think it was great. So that is my presentation on Finding Nemo. Just that it's a beautiful film about, self-improvement, putting your trust in others, and just, it's a beautiful film and it's hilarious. So I'm going to stop my share now. So Mike, we talked a little bit about this. Like, what's your favorite scene in this movie?
There's a lot, but I think if you couldn't tell, I do like Bruce a lot. Mm-hmm. And I do think that entire scene with the sharks, it's funny because they're sharks. They're supposed to eat other fish, and here they are. They're Dory and Marlin are terrified that they're going to get eaten, and here they are. They're in like a AA session here for not eating fish, and sure enough, just like any old shark, who's a Dory gets a nosebleed, and they smell the blood and they revert back to their natural ways. That scene is just too funny. Then they just wreak havoc all over the place down there. It's too funny. I think that's probably my favorite scene.
I do really like that part when, and it's funny because they kind of like, that scene almost like parodies Deep Blue Sea in a way, where they kind of like, the shark kind of hit that thing to get in, but like the shark is trying to get to Marlin and Dory, and the other two fish kind of pop up and like, we're sorry about Bruce. He's really a nice guy. Like, so much funnier. Like
if you think about like Little Mermaid, there's a shark in there that what's his name? Flounder. I almost called him Guppy. He is a guppy. Flounder and Ariel are running away from the shark, Disney kind of vilifies the shark a little bit, and of course Jaws, the most famous shark.
Yeah.
Sharks are, kind of. This was a funny shark. It worked really well, I thought. And look at that smile. I mean, it's great. I think he's one of the best characters in that movie.
It's funny because, like, I mean, he does, yes, try and eat them, but like, you can't even really call him a villain. Like, he was doing good. He tasted blood and reverted to his natural instincts. It's not even his fault. So, yeah.
The little girl was way more terrifying than he was.
Oh,
Sure.
totally. Yeah. Trying to think what else.
Well, I to kind of talk technical about the movie. I mean, it is underwater. I do think that lighting plays a very important part in this because lighting under. I'm a lighting person by trade, and I also play a lot of video games. I have a video game talk show, and we talk about ray tracing a lot and how lighting is important to make the whatever the media is believable. And I think the creators of this movie did a really good job of actually showing how the light under the water looks. They just from the picture that is behind you, they really were thoughtful about how lighting underwater operates and the color that it is perceived by the human eye. I think that that's very important to note. The other movies are just above water and it's sunlight, but here you have water to deal with, and I think they did a great job on that.
They actually had to, a lot of the main creative forces had to actually take scuba diving classes.
Wow.
And like literally see what it looked like. And they had to, they took, they studied marine biology and all this stuff. Like they made sure they were well informed. This movie has to look like it's made by people who know what they're doing,
Yeah. Yep.
And maybe, even if you didn't study that, you could probably get it pretty close. But like, there's just a few little things that extra attention to detail can make this go above and beyond. Like, I'm not going to diss another movie that came out at the same time as this, Shark Tale. But if you watch Shark Tale compared to this, you can clearly tell there's one group of animators who really took the time to figure their stuff out. And then there's another group that, like, no. You know what I mean? It's like, ugh. That was DreamWorks being like, guys, we have Shrek. We need something else here. Finding Nemo was doing all right, I guess. Make me my Finding Nemo, but it didn't work. So, yeah.
I also kind of like the whole, you gave some characteristics about how the movie's relatable to people. I like how two unlikely friends meet up and, now they're lifelong friends. Marlon probably would have never met Dory if it wasn't for her circumstance, which you find out in her movie. Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't for, Nemo getting lost, I think that's great. Sometimes your best friend, you meet in the most unlikely place. And I think that they're a great team. And of course they have their ups and downs, but kind of like, Woody and Buzz, I guess. But in this case, it's a fish and it's hysterical because
yeah.
Fish have some pretty hard scenarios to go through.
Mm-hmm. And it's also funny because, like, given Marlon's personality, like, he shouldn't like Dory at all,
I picture him. I kind of wanted to see maybe some more about how, like, I picture him being very, clean and organized and doesn't like things out of place. And she just comes through and destroys his little sea anemone. She can't even get in there because it'll just sting her. But it's funny that she forgets that she can get hurt by that thing. It's just, the humor in it is really funny.
Oh, yeah. Oh man. But,
let's see. Well, we should talk about Nemo a little bit too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I didn't really mention Nemo. I apologize, other than saying that Boo Han's a thing. But I don't know if our three people or you have watched the show Weeds, but Mary Louise Parker. But one of her sons is Alexander Gold, who is Nemo.
Oh wow.
So, obviously he's not Nemo in the second one because would have been 12 years older.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I think Nemo is a great character, and Nemo wants to be tough, and it's kind of like you almost wonder if Marlin ever really explained to Nemo what happened to his mother. You know what I mean? Because, like, it's kind of like Nemo just kind of, I mean, I'm not saying everything Marlin did was right or wrong. It's just, Nemo clearly just feels annoyed and almost like, I don't know why you're doing this,
Right. I mean, I think that he's protective dad. Obviously, his wife and Nemo's mother had a tragic accident.
Mm.
Um, and of course, he's worried about Nemo's limitation. But Nemo learns um, that he obviously he has a limitation, but he has to overcome it, and he's special enough that he can get out of that aquarium tank because he's small enough and he's powerful enough to do that. And Gil, I almost said Finn. Gil kind of is like that uncle character, father figure character who teaches him that and shows him, I'm from the wild. I got injured. Don't let your circumstance define you. You can overcome this. And then, that's part of growing up. And, when he finally meets his father, when they're about to escape, of course, at the end of the movie,
Mm.
it gets reversed. Nemo teaches him a lesson, and he says, you have to listen to me now, and let's save these fish and save Dory. I learned something. You need to let me do this.
Yeah,
So,
I can do this. And then Marlon goes, I know you can. Dude, that scene gets
yep.
me every time. It's a big moment. Yeah, dude, so good. So good.
Swim down is something I say a lot. Just if we're, people are having a day, just like swim down. Swim down. Some people don't get it, but I think some kind of do.
Yeah. I feel like I had something and I forget what I was gonna say. Yeah, it's not that important. If I think of it, I'll let you know. But yeah, it's I really like the scenes in the dentist office, not just
Yep.
in the fish tank, but one of my favorite parts, and it's so stupid, is literally when the fish are flopping around at the end and the bird comes in and the fish gets on Darla's head, and you see in the waiting room the little boy just sees what looks like the dentist picking out her teeth, and his face just goes.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
My God,
Well,
you can get these heartfelt moments and then just have a silly scene like that. It's just so good.
you kind of bring up a point. What are your thoughts on how humans are perceived in this movie? Because I don't know what you talked about in Toy Story, but these are characters that aren't human, but there are humans in this world.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? How do you think that they perceive humans in this?
I don't want to call them all the villains, but I mean, they kind of just, the humans don't care about the fish in any way.
Or does it translate to the ecosystem too? Is it in general? They kind of touch on it a little bit. I mean, with the landmines left over, I thought, different things. I think there's some messaging in there, I think.
Oh, totally.
But
I mean, and I think Andrew Stanton feels a certain way about society and the way people do things. I mean, because his next one was Wall-E, and that film, there's messages all over that thing.
Yep.
But no, I mean, yeah, you're probably on to something. I would say that is, definitely hidden meanings in there, if not obvious. But yeah,
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, I forgot to say at the beginning, you can type them into the Zoom chat.
If you want to talk about your favorite part too, whether on camera or not, or if you want us to touch upon it, yeah. Oh my God, with the tank part, the part literally that always gets me is that it's so stupid, but when the tanks all explode and the one bubble comes up with the two birds, nice. Literally, it's so funny.
Oh, this is a good question from Craig Smith. So we think Ellen's performance as Dory in this movie has to rank up there with the best voiceover performance of modern animated films. Can you think of a better voiceover performance? Well, go ahead, Anthony. Why don't you take that? Because I do agree that that performance is very strong. But voiceovers, I think of voiceovers also in video games as well as animated films. So I'll have to think about that. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so I have to remove motion capture characters, so no Andy Serkis because he's there. But Oh man, I mean, I really like Tom Hanks as Woody, but honestly, I'm gonna take a different turn here. Um, I'm gonna give two answers. They're not kids' movies. So I don't know who does the voice of Hal in 2001: A Space Odyssey, but I found that very menacing.
Oh, interesting.
And I actually loved and think she should have been nominated for an Oscar. Scarlett Johansson in Her, I thought was
Oh,
beautiful.
interesting.
So
That's interesting.
if I think of anything else, I'll let you know. But yeah, oh
See,
my God, no, I take it back. I take it back. I have the one that best of them all. Oh my God,
go
forgive me.
ahead. Go ahead.
This might be an obvious answer. I apologize if I stole yours. Robin Williams as the genie in
Oh,
Aladdin.
that's not who I had, but actually,
Okay.
you know what? That's really good. I don't know. I think that if you guys asked who we didn't like, we'd probably have better answers, because quite frankly, the voice actors who are really good, you remember them and you quote them all the time. And Robin Williams is a good one. Ashley Birch is a very good voice actress. She does video games and a lot of cartoons. I just looked up who did Hal for you. It's Douglas Rain is the voice of Hal.
Okay.
Um, Jan wants us to know that today is actually World Oceans Day. How did you coordinate that so well?
That is called a happy accident, is what that is. So we just
Yeah,
wanted to start this. So this is the first of 4 Pixar Monday shows. We just
okay.
wanted to start with what we felt was the most popular, that wasn't Toy Story because we already did it.
So you did Toy Story already, and then what's the next one?
So next one is The Incredibles, which I think probably has the strongest cult following of any Pixar film.
Wow.
And then in 2 weeks, we're doing Coco. And then we are doing a show like the Star Wars debate show the last Monday. And
Oh, wow. Great.
we'll all argue and get our feelings hurt. But probably not as bad as the Star Wars one, because
Oh, that's
Pixar
great.
fans are more adults than Star Wars fans. Well, they act more like adults. So
I don't know. We'll have to see. Some of these, The Incredibles and Toy Story and Finding Nemo, they have some pretty. I'm sure they have some pretty interesting opinions about some of the topics in there.
yeah.
It'd be pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm excited though. We got some good stuff. So Chip O'Prey messaged me. He wants to come on screen and ask questions. So can you unmute him?
Yes, I can. You are unmuted. No, you aren't. Yes, you are. Okay. Hello.
Hi there. So yeah, this was Finding Nemo was one of my favorites. Pixar's Disney Pixar movies as well. One of my favorite lines, and probably also favorite part of the movie, was after Dory and Marlin got out of the current, they were trying to find somebody to ask directions to Sydney, and they looked in the distance and they spotted a whale. And Dory tries to speak whale. This is really how she. It's funny how she did it, the way she moved her mouth and made the sounds.
Yep.
What was your favorite line?
Favorite line?
Favorite line.
I don't know if so much a line, but I really like every time Dory does not say Nemo. She calls him. She goes, "Oh, he's trying to find his son, Chico. Oh, we lost Fabio. Harpo. Like."
Harpo, yeah.
Yeah, like that. Every time, I think I still laugh just as much as the first time I heard it in 2003. So, but and I'm sure that's probably not even in the script. That's probably saying Ellen DeGeneres, mess up his name. You know what I mean? Like, just call him what comes to your mind. So, but Mike, what about you? Favorite line?
I do have one, and of course, I don't know the number. I like when Marlin returns. I like when Marlin and Nemo are reunited, and Marlin tells Nemo that he met a sea turtle and he found out how old he was. 100 and 112, 100. What is it?
150. 150. Yeah.
150. I think that there's just a lot in that, because Nemo always wanted to know. He didn't really learn it in school, and his dad went on this great adventure and found that out. And it's kind of like, son, I found this out, coming to rescue you. I know you've always wanted to know. it's, I think that that's just a very touching moment.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a very touching movie, man.
Yeah.
It's
There's also a couple of my other favorites as well. After Bruce keeps knocking at the door, it's like a good reference to The Shining. We'd be like, "Here's Brucey."
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
There's also another one when Darla's entrance, how she slams the door, and you hear the famous horror music from Psycho.
Yep.
That's a good reference too.
She was terrifying, and I agree. She's way more terrifying than Bruce. Yeah, it's just like a fish's worst nightmare.
Pixar must have a thing against kids with braces, because this Sid in Toy Story, like, they're the villains. Like, Andy, perfect teeth. You know what I mean? I don't get it, but yeah. But I would. Did they ever? They don't. No, they don't bring her back. I'm like, I need to watch Finding Dory again, but like, they don't bring Darla back in any way, do they? Does anybody remember?
No, they didn't. I don't think they brought Darla back to Finding Dory.
Okay.
No.
Even as like a nod or a reference, but yeah, I guess
Terrifying.
not. Because like in Toy Story 3, like Sid is technically the garbage man at the beginning of the movie. Like, I just didn't know if there's some girl in Finding Dory who smiles with just a.
That would have been really good. Her braces were off. She's a little bit older.
Yeah.
She sees the fish that or she goes to the aquarium like against her will because she's terrified of fish now or something like that, and it's like traumatic.
So there is a question I have that I actually don't know if you would know the answer, Mike. I don't know if you have any plumbing knowledge or anything like that.
Oh God, what do you want to know?
They try and flush Nemo to get him into the ocean. Is that how that works? I would imagine somehow in there he's getting sliced up somewhere. Like there's some kind of.
I have a great response to that. It's Australia. I don't know how they do it in Australia. Here, honestly, he probably would have been pretty injured.
Grinding Nemo. Like, no, I don't want that.
I don't know.
Always wondered how that worked. So
I think that's the fish look at that as all drains lead to the ocean, and that was the goal, and that's what they went with. I'm glad they did it in Australia though, and not here.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I'm just gonna, I guess, use the excuse I should have just come up with, and it's a movie. Just let it go. But I've always just been curious. So, oh well.
Well, thanks, Chip, for chiming in. We appreciate that. I will. Yep. Thank you for muting yourself. I do have a comment from Craig Smith, and he says we also like the scene in the fish tank with the Mount Wanahonka Lugi. I'm gonna mess up that.
The Ring of Fire.
Yeah. They snuck that in there. Had to explain that. Had to explain what a loogie is.
Oh man.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's a good scene. I actually like. I don't remember his name.
Wanahonka Lugi.
What's that like little prawn?
That's funny.
Yeah, but in my head, I just remember that scene like vividly with the prawns screaming, oh, trying to do the music or whatever. But
I think of Titanic.
Oh God.
That's what I think of.
So good.
Man. That's interesting. And I like that. That's a very good scene, obviously. But it's just funny because they're in a fish tank, and that's what they do for fun. These humans buy these expensive things for these fish to entertain themselves with. It's just so funny.
Oh my God. Do you think? Let's talk, because it seems like Pixar eventually started making lots of sequels. We got a Finding Dory. Do you think there's a third Finding movie in there somewhere? Do they lose Marlin? Is this a family that's just not meant to stay together? Like, questions. What do you think?
I don't know. Maybe someone, if you don't know, Anthony, how far apart chronologically are the two movies?
I don't think they're far apart at all. I think because Nemo still has the voice of I don't know fish years, but he still sounds like a little kid. I think they're supposed to be pretty close to one another.
Yeah, I think so. And what's actually interesting is that even Dory getting lost is relatively close to relatively close to Finding Nemo. She meets Marlin. I don't know. I might be mistaken, but yeah, they're relatively close in timeline. I don't know. I think a third movie. Is it close again? Is it like a year later, or is it several years later? I think that there's potential for a third movie because you said the numbers. It was successful. It was heartfelt. Toy Story got 4 movies. Look at the movies that got sequels and why. But you also make a good point. If Ellen pushed for Finding Dory, maybe I don't know. I think it could. I think a third movie could definitely come down the line.
Okay.
I don't know what would happen in it, but
no, me neither. But
how about a Bruce spin-off movie?
I'd watch that. I mean, I don't know if everyone else would, but I think there could be like Bruce segments on Disney Plus or something like that.
Yep, Disney Plus. That's where it could go.
A day in the life of Bruce or something like that, But
life of Bruce. That could be.
Oh boy.
All right.
Do we have any questions?
Anybody else have any? Nothing else here. But cool. Oh, yeah. Did you freeze?
No, I'm still here. Are you? Mike?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
I'm here. I love how we both look like we're underwater. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good.
We both look like we're underwater. I like that.
Yeah. Although that makes me disappear. So.
Okay.
Good stuff. Although I feel like I'm losing one of my ears, but it's cool. So, no worries.
Wow. Well, great. If there's no other questions for Anthony or comments, I guess we'll wrap it up. Anthony, any final thoughts on this?
If you've ever met a person who hasn't seen this movie, show it to them. Life will be better. That's really all. Like I said, this is an amazing movie. It's a feel-good movie. You can find this on the best animated movie of all time list. You can find this on the best movies of the 21st century list. Like it's just that good. That's the thing about Pixar. Like they make a movie that's for everybody, but like they make it with they put everything they have into these movies. Like that's what I like about them. Is I would still say I think Pixar is the best studio working today in terms of overall quality. Granted, they make a movie a year, so it's hard to screw that track record up. But yeah, it's amazing. And watch Finding Nemo; it'll never get old. So.
All right, will do. I'll definitely spread the word. We look forward to seeing it at the Frank Banko Alehouse Cinemas sometime, huh?
We'll see.
Thank you, Craig. Craig always writes in a message thanking us. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we have a little tradition on the Zoom calls where I'll unmute everyone and we give Anthony a round of applause. So I'll do that in 3, 2, 1.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And did that work? Yeah,
I heard Craig, so it's cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. And thanks for watching another movie talk with Anthony DeSantis. I'm Mike Lero, and I run a video game talk on Wednesdays at 7 o'clock. If you're interested in video games, we have a lot of other free programming on ArtsQuest at Home, artsquest.org/at-home. There's 11 concerts streaming this weekend as well, Thursday, Friday, Saturday on the Levitt Pavilion Steel Stacks. And today's episode of Movie Talk was sponsored by Lehigh Valley Health Network and UGI, and the whole ArtsQuest at Home programming is sponsored by BSI. Thanks, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you next time. All right.
See ya.